Earlier today in Lilongwe, the political temperature spiked faster than the Malawian sun at noon. The reason? President Peter Mutharika walked into the national spotlight and, in his signature calm but deadly tone, unveiled a new cabinet list that has left the nation talking, tweeting, and in some corners, quietly panicking. The announcement felt less like a government update and more like a chess master making his final move before checkmate. Every name on that list told a story of loyalty, redemption, regional balance, and the thin line between power and politics. And right at the center of it all, Brian Banda, a man who many thought had faded from political relevance, suddenly found himself back in the headlines. Some call it a comeback. Others whisper it's a calculation. Zimene zindi zachitika, kuti Brian Banda bwerere. Komandie Malawi hii. How did this happen? Brian Banda's return? Only in Malawi, murmured a vendor outside a newsstand in Blantyre, holding a folded copy of The Nation like it contained state secrets. Social media erupted instantly. Twitter threads turned into political debates, WhatsApp groups, pure chaos. The country once again had its favorite pastime back, analyzing, predicting, and of course, arguing about cabinet appointments. But behind the memes and noise lies a serious question. What exactly is Mutharika trying to achieve with this reshuffle? Because this isn't just about names, it's about narrative. The president has drawn new lines in the sand, rewarding loyalty, balancing regions, rebranding his legacy, and sending subtle warnings to both his allies and his critics. So today, we unpack it all. 10 truths buried inside this cabinet that reveal the strategy, the symbolism, and the story behind Malawi's newest power equation. This is Global Pulse News, coming to you from the heart of Lilongwe, where every appointment tells a story and every silence means something. Let's start with the opening play. When President Peter Mutharika stood at the podium, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His tone was calm, deliberate, and surgical. This wasn't a reshuffle, it was a reset. The cabinet announcement dropped like a thunderclap across the Capitol. Some names were expected, others completely out of the blue. But one thing was clear. Mutharika was sending a message. Boma la sogola ninjira ya tsapono, he said in Chichawa. The government is moving in a new direction. To the untrained ear, it sounded routine, but to seasoned political observers, it was a signal. This wasn't just a new list, it was a political rebirth, one meant to rewrite internal loyalties while recalibrating national optics. The biggest surprise was, of course, Brian Banda. The comeback nobody predicted, but everybody's now talking about. His appointment didn't just shock the opposition, it shocked parts of DPP itself. To some, it felt like Mutharika was reviving old alliances. To others, it was a sign that the president is securing his final legacy team, people he trusts, not necessarily people the public loves. Political analysts quickly drew comparisons to 2014, when Mutharika's first cabinet had the same DNA, loyalty over popularity, structure over spectacle. Peter is a builder, not a gambler, one senior DPP insider said. He'd rather lose applause than control. But this time, there's a twist. The landscape has changed. The public is louder, hungrier, and more skeptical than ever. Still, this cabinet reset proves one thing. Mutharika is playing the long game, and in his chessboard of politics, every pawn is personal. Transition look. But to understand why this shakeup matters, you have to look at who Mutharika brought back and why some people think the president's latest ally, Brian Banda, could become both his greatest strength and his biggest gamble.
If Malawian politics were a movie, Brian Banda would be the surprise twist that nobody saw coming. The guy who exits in Act 1 disappears through the middle scenes and then walks back in just before the credits holding a brand new script. Once one of the most recognizable media voices in the country, a journalist, a communicator, and, at one point, a government mouthpiece, Banda's journey has been anything but quiet. He's been praised, criticized, sidelined, and now reinstated. When his name appeared on Mutharika's new cabinet list, reactions were instant. One tweet summed it up best. Brian Banda? Wait, isn't that the same guy who roasted officials on live radio 5 years ago? Yes, the very same. Mutharika's decision to bring Banda back isn't random. It's strategic, pure political optics. The president knows image is everything, and Banda's sharp communication style, both in English and Chichewa, gives the administration a voice that feels relatable yet professional. Amata kulankula monga antu, koma amamfetsetse ngati mzogoleri, said one political analyst. He speaks like the people, but he's understood like a leader. That's a rare balance in Malawian politics, and Mutharika knows it. By reintroducing Banda, he's not just filling a cabinet seat, he's rebooting his public relations DNA. Of course, not everyone's celebrating. Some critics call Banda's appointment a nostalgic gamble, suggesting it could reopen old controversies from his media years. But supporters counter that this is exactly what DPP needs: clarity, charisma, and controlled chaos. Banda's comeback also sends a message. Mutharika values loyalty that can evolve. In a country where alliances shift faster than fuel prices, Banda's comeback proves that silence, when timed right, can be a political superpower. Transition hook. But Mutharika's choices weren't just about communication. They were about composition. Because the next truth behind this new cabinet lies in who made it in and who didn't. Every cabinet reshuffle in Malawi is a political drama, with winners walking on clouds and losers staring at silent phones. But Mutharika's latest announcement, that was a casting call for survival. The list came with surgical precision, not just about competence, but calculation. You could almost hear the president saying, if you weren't loyal when the ship was sinking, don't expect a seat when it sails again. Among the winners were a few familiar faces, loyalists who have stood by Mutharika since the days when DPP's fortunes looked uncertain. They got their rewards: key ministries, strategic roles, and the president's renewed trust. Uyundie muntu amene amadiyua kutamanda bwana ntawi yake, a party insider joked. This one knows exactly when to praise the boss. But the losers, that's where the real story lies. Several big political names vanished from the list, dropped quietly, no explanations, no ceremony. These were people once seen at every rally, every photo op, every government function, and now ghosted. It's classic Mutharika, calm on the surface, ruthless underneath. Insiders say the president was determined to prune his tree of unreliable branches. Anyone suspected of disloyalty, double-dealing, or whispering with rival factions found themselves outside the fence. Analysts see it as a tactical purge, not out of spite, but necessity. After the chaotic years of factional battles within DPP, Mutharika is rebuilding discipline, not friendship. And the new cabinet proves one thing. He's done playing defense. This is consolidation season. One commentator on Zodiac FM said it best. Mutharika akumanga gulu la omutsatira osati omochemera. Mutharika is building a team of followers, not fortune seekers. But if loyalty was the ticket in, what about diversity? Because one thing Malawians always notice, sometimes before policies, sometimes before results, is representation. Transition hook. And that brings us straight to the next truth, that's sparking both applause and side eyes across the nation.
In Malawi, cabinet announcements aren't just about who gets the job. They're about where that person comes from. It's a national ritual, a political math problem where every name must fit the equation of North, Center, and South. So when Mutharika's new cabinet list dropped, the first question wasn't who's qualified, it was Koriantu aku central lalipati. That's how deep the regional heartbeat runs. This time, the president seems to have played his cards carefully. On paper, it looks like a fair mix. Southern loyalists in key ministries, central technocrats in economic portfolios, and a sprinkle of northern representation in advisory positions. It's a balancing act that tries to whisper, "We are one Malawi." But dig deeper, and you'll hear the political echoes beneath the harmony, because behind every inclusive pick lies a power strategy. Analysts argue that Mutharika's regional balance is more about optics than outreach, a visual gesture meant to calm critics and project unity while still keeping the core power structure firmly in his stronghold. One senior journalist put it bluntly, "Zachichika ngatikuti Malawi onse ya patikijidwa, komampamu zonse zikadalipo ku South." It looks like the whole country is included, but the real power is still in the South. And that's classic Mutharika politics, quiet control dressed as cooperation. Still, it works, because while critics tweet, the optics of diversity keep the headlines soft and the international community smiling. It's a smart move, especially at a time when Malawi's unity feels tested by economic pressure, party divisions, and post-election fatigue. Regional balance may be political window dressing, but it's a window that still faces the world. If there's one headline from this cabinet reshuffle that gave people a little hope and a lot of debate, it's the number of women who made it to the table. For years, Malawians have demanded more women representation in government, not as token gestures, but as genuine agents of change. So when Mutharika's list came out and it featured several notable women in key ministries, the mood was mixed. Excitement on one side, skepticism on the other. Because let's be honest, Malawi has been here before. We've seen women in office without the power to shape policy, and others sidelined the moment they start making noise. But this time feels slightly different. Among those appointed are leaders with proven track records in law, education, and finance, women who have already earned respect beyond the political bubble. One Lilongwe commentator said it best, "Apa podisima quota basis, awa ndiakazi okuhala ndimbiri." This isn't about gender quotas. These are women with real merit. Mutharika's move could be strategic, of course. Optics matter in 2025, but even optics can create opportunity. When young Malawian girls turn on MBC and see women commanding ministries, it plants a seed. Representation, even when imperfect, shifts culture. Still, there's a question hanging in the air. Will these women be given real authority or just the appearance of it? Because empowerment isn't about the number of chairs, it's about who's allowed to speak when the meeting starts. In the end, the symbolic and the substantive are dancing a very close tango in Mutharika's new cabinet. It's progress, but it's also politics. But while the spotlight shines on new faces and gender wins, there's another story quietly unfolding beneath the surface, one that's all about returning faces and political recycling.
When the cabinet list went public, many Malawians rubbed their eyes and asked, "Wait, si Ameneu analipo kale? Isn't this the same person who was already there?" Yes, indeed. Peter Mutharika didn't just bring in fresh faces, he resurrected several seasoned politicians who've been part of his political DNA for years. From long-serving ministers to advisors who've been with him through political storms, the new cabinet feels like a reunion of trusted hands, the veterans who understand how Mutharika thinks, speaks, and governs. At first glance, it might seem like a step backward, recycling instead of renewal. But in Mutharika's world, familiarity equals efficiency. Better the devil you know, as one DPP strategist quietly said. There's logic behind the move. These are people who've managed crises, crafted policies, and, most importantly, survived political turbulence. They're not just loyal, they're experienced operators who know how to keep government machinery steady. It's also a statement of control. By bringing back the familiar, Mutharika minimizes risk. No wild cards, no new egos, no unexpected rebellions. Still, this approach divides opinion. Younger voters see it as political recycling, a refusal to let go of old power structures. But the establishment calls it stability. Malawi siyamata kuyesa antu siku lilonse, said one official. Malawi can't afford to experiment with new people every day. That may be true, but it also means innovation takes a backseat to institutional loyalty. Mutharika's reshuffle, in essence, is not about creating a new story. It's about retelling an old one with sharper lines and more controlled dialogue. He trusts his old circle because they've already proven one thing. They know how to keep his government intact. Transition hook. But even as old faces return, one question lingers across Malawi's political scene. What space remains for the new generation? Would you like me to continue with Fact 7, approximately 370 words, exploring how Mutharika's cabinet handles youth inclusion, what this means for Malawi's next generation, and the long-term political message behind it? You can always tell when the youth of Malawi are disappointed. Social media starts glowing like a Christmas tree. And right after Mutharika's cabinet list dropped, TikTok, X, and Facebook were all on fire. Abale, kodi yife a youth, tirikuti palistimene, one post read. Guys, where are we, the youth, on this list? It's a valid question. Malawi's population is overwhelmingly young, nearly 2/3 under the age of 30, yet cabinet tables often look like reunions from the political class of the early 2000s. This reshuffle, while balanced in other areas, left many wondering if the government still sees youth as the country's future or just its audience. Mutharika's administration has always spoken about empowering young people, but this time the action didn't match the rhetoric. Apart from a few relatively younger appointees in secondary roles, the main positions remain occupied by familiar, older hands. And the reaction has been sharp. You can't keep saying the youth are our tomorrow while locking them out of today, one university student told Zodiac TV. Still, some analysts argue that Mutharika's government is playing the long game, grooming young talent in deputy positions before handing them full control. Boma siringango pereka mpungu mwadzidzidzi, said one senior party member. Government can't just hand out power overnight. Fair point, but time isn't exactly on the youth's side. With unemployment high and innovation bubbling at the grassroots, young Malawians want a chance to help steer the ship, not just clap from the deck. The irony is, Malawi's political energy is youthful, on social media, in activism, in business. It's the system that hasn't caught up.
If you really want to know how Malawians feel about politics, don't check the official statements. Take a minibus from Limbe to Area 25. That's where the real parliament sits. The moment Peter Mutharika's new cabinet list hit the airwaves, the streets lit up. Vendors at Soka Market turned political analysts. Radio callers in Mzuzu became policy critics. Even boda drivers in Lilongwe were debating ministerial merit between fares. Koma Mutharika panga reset. One driver laughed. Mutharika has hit the reset button. But the tone wasn't uniform. While some praised the president for bringing back experienced hands, others felt the move was a recycled promise in a new envelope. At a roadside cafe in Blantyre, a group of young men huddled around a radio. One of them, holding a plate of chips, said, "Tikumvanga di boma ilindi mpramvu, koma sitikudiwa ngati dzatitandiza." We can feel this government has energy, but we don't know if it'll help us. It's that blend of hope and hesitation that defines Malawi's current political mood. Social media told the same story. Hashtags like New Cabinet MW, hashtag Mutharika Reset, and hashtag Brian Banda returns trended within hours. Some users made memes celebrating the inclusions, others questioned why the usual suspects were still in power. Political satire pages had a field day. One popular meme showed Mutharika holding a chessboard captioned, "Your move, Malawi." It's democracy, the Malawian way. Half humor, half critique, all passion. But beyond public opinion and hashtags, there's something deeper. The purpose behind all this movement. Because a cabinet isn't just about today's politics, it's about tomorrow's legacy.